So before we get started, we do have just some ground rules and a little bit more explanation about why we're all here tonight. We do want to thank everybody for the cookies. I think that was courtesy of our applicant team and some others in the room. So thank you, Josh and others, for supplying us with sugar tonight. We are here tonight for the public hearing on SEQRA for the Tilden Commons project. I think everybody at this point understands SEQRA is an acronym, but I'm just going to read just a little bit of language about it. SEQRA is the State Environmental Quality Review Act, under which projects are subject to environmental review and consideration. The Planning Board was designated the lead agency of the coordinated review for this Type 1 action in June of 2025. It is the general practice of our Planning Board to hold public hearings prior to completing Parts 2 and 3 of SEQRA. The applicant has provided the Board with Part 1. Copies, we do have some copies if anybody would like to look at them tonight. We've also begun considering our responses to Part 2. We do have a couple blank copies of those also available tonight if you have any questions about those questions that we are reviewing. Part 3 will summarize our decision at the time it is made. In SEQRA review, a lead agency may either determine that a project does not present significant environmental impacts and issue a negative determination of significance, or that a project does present significant environmental impacts and issue a positive determination of significance. A negative determination, meaning there are no significant environmental impacts, is not final approval for the project. It is the lead agency determining that there are no potentially significant environmental impacts that cannot be mitigated. Similarly, a positive determination, meaning there are significant environmental impacts, is not denial of a project. If the board issues a positive determination, then further environmental review is required and preparation of an environmental impact statement, or EIS, is required. A determination of significance is required before the board may continue its review of the proposed project. This is also true for the zoning board, where there is an active application for a variance before them. The purpose of our public comments tonight is to give you, our community, an opportunity to bring to us questions, comments, or concerns related to the environmental impacts of the proposed project. We welcome and value your input as we work through the issues before us. When speaking, please keep in mind that we are asking for respectful, constructive, and fact-based contributions that pertain to the SEQRA review. Just bear with us. We don't usually get this much technology at our meetings. Probably the last time we'll ever get this much technology. Comments should be focused on or relate to one or more of the questions in SEQRA. We ask that you refrain from making personal attacks, using offensive language, or engaging in disruptive behavior. We do understand there's passion for and against the proposed project in the community, but disruptive or disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated. We may ask you to leave, and the board does have the authority to leave the hearing open and adjourn the meeting if things get out of hand. We have cookies. Nobody should get out of hand. We will be calling community members to the microphone in the order that you signed in to speak. That microphone is right here in front of us with the orange end on it. If you did not sign in, please see our lovely clerk on the end, Courtney. She will help you do so. If you signed in and you decide you don't want to speak, when we call on you, just state that you have changed your mind. We absolutely respect that. If at any point during the hearing you do change your mind and wish to speak, feel free to make your way to our clerk, and she will help you get signed up to speak at the end of the meeting. When you're called, step forward to the microphone, as I indicated before us. We are asking that you address the board. You're not addressing the entirety of the community or the applicant. It is us, the board. Neither the board or the applicant plan to respond to individual speakers unless there are questions that arise regarding the actual procedure, i.e. what happens next. We are asking that the applicant document any questions for which they may have answers to during the meeting, and if they so choose, they do have time at the end of the meeting to address those questions. Or they can certainly respond to those after the fact. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board, and you cannot donate or share your time with anybody else. Please be mindful of your time so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. We are asking that our board and our clerk monitor the time so that everybody has the same 3 minutes. We ask that you do respect the time of all of us in this room by not repeating comments that have already been made. If you agree with a previous speaker, you can simply state your agreement rather than restating their points. If you're speaking on behalf of a group, we encourage you to summarize the group's views, but again, please avoid repetition of points already made. We are looking specifically for facts, data, or other relevant information that supports your position. Your contributions are most valuable when they are based on concrete facts, as this will assist the board in making a well-informed decision and performing its required hard look under SEQRA. It's also important to note again that tonight we are addressing the environmental impacts of the proposed projects as they pertain to SEQRA, and not simply whether one likes or dislikes the project. I think it goes without saying that everybody in this room will be polite and courteous to everybody here. This is an opportunity for us to learn from you, and we hope that you will work together to maintain that respectful environment. As far as how tonight will run, we have asked that the applicant provide a presentation. We recognize there's been lots of documents that have been submitted, and they're going to summarize that so that we are all talking about the same project. We have been receiving some public comments. The planning board does not read written public comments aloud, but they have all been shared with the board, and they have been disseminated to each of the members and will be posted online when our clerk is back in front of a computer and not taking minutes tonight. After the applicant finishes their presentation, we're going to open the public hearing. So while they are talking, if you have questions for them, please scribble them down. You can add that as part of your 3 minutes to talk. And then we'll open the public hearing. We'll listen to our community, and then depending on how late we go and how the board feels at the end, we will close said public hearing. I will ask once, are there any questions about what's going to happen tonight? Great. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the applicant. Oh. It's all you.
Can everybody hear me okay? It's working? Yeah, okay, great. My name is Josh Young.
Can I hold the microphone closer?
My name is Josh Young. And I'm here as one member of the applicant that is proposing this mixed-use project to be a couple hundred yards that way on what we all call Tilden Plaza. That mixed use consists of 2 uses. One is a grocery, and the other use is housing. As some of you may know, I already help operate a grocery that's just across the street here. We started that grocery 4 or 5 years ago. It grew up organically out of the farmer's market. And we take a lot of pride in the work we do there, helping bring local products to all of us as much as we can. We do know that that market is very difficult to operate. I just mean it takes a lot of work. And it also could better serve the community, in my view at least, if it were bigger. And by that I just mean that some scale would allow us to buy products more cheaply and pass along those savings. Scale would allow us to include a more diverse, larger and more diverse mix of products in the mix and allow us to lower prices. For example, we just don't have much room for gallons of milk. But a gallon of milk is a much cheaper way to buy milk than a half gallon. And also, we'll just benefit from a lot of operational efficiencies by having more specialized members of the team. So we're really excited about that grocery, and I see some of the folks here whom I work with, and I know that that grocery, something that we could, fairly call a supermarket, even as it would be a relatively small supermarket as those standards go, has been a big part of what this community has asked for, including, as indicated by the comprehensive plan. That's a big deal for me. My family's lived here for 20-ish years, but I'm a new resident, about 6 years, just over 6 years. And one of the most rewarding experiences of my life has been to try to build something that my neighbors appreciate. So I'm looking out and I'm seeing new shoppers, and I appreciate all y'all here. And I really, really hope that we as a team can build something that everyone in town can enjoy. The other part of the mixed use is housing. So the basic idea here is affordable housing. That can be somewhat of a difficult term. The technical definition is that it means you're paying 30% of your gross income for your housing and not more. What it means for us is that we would apply to the state. There's an agency called Homes and Community Renewal for grant funding. That grant funding would cover some of the costs of construction, and the rest of the costs of construction, not just construction, but design and engineering and lots of other things too, would be covered by a traditional vanilla commercial mortgage. Basically what the state does is it says, if you agree to keep your rents at rates that are relatively affordable for the people in your community, then we expect you to use those rents to pay your mortgage, so you've got a sustainable but not a profitable building. And because you have capped your rents, we know that the mortgage you can get from those expected cash flows will not be sufficient to cover the whole cost of construction. There's some gap, it's usually pretty large. We'll help make up that gap. One way Tony puts it frequently is they help you make your first mortgage payment. Based on our experience, we expect 86 residents to live there. The math is relatively straightforward. I think we, based on experience with similar buildings, expect on average 1 or 1.25 residents per one bedroom, and whatever the math is, but like two-ish residents for 2 bedrooms. The way that the state handles how you set your rents is somewhat complicated. It's based on area median income, which changes from year to year. We haven't finalized for what would be an application coming this fall, what those rents would be, but we nevertheless do anticipate, very much anticipate, our 21 one-bedrooms to be roughly $1,100 and the 2 bedrooms to be a bit more than that. And then finally, in addition to a nice front yard between the front of the grocery and 2022, there'd be a nice lawn. There'll be plenty of parking, both for grocery customers and for residents. Those are in 2 relatively different areas. And then there's also will be a nice lawn in back and another little area for residents to hang out with. I'm not going to go too much into that because pretty soon I'm going to introduce Ari, and he's our architect, and we'll go into lots of those details. But I do want to say, wrapping this up, that we believe very deeply that this will be a great benefit to this town. Like I said before, we know, going back to the oh-so-close attempt to bring in a Hannaford, that this is something we all really, really want. It's also something that I think will really benefit families. By that I mean young families with kids, but I also mean seniors, and then also workers. I own a business here. I talk to lots of other business owners in this area, and all of the ones I talk to, most of them, are really desperate for places for their workers. So for all of those audiences, I think the apartments will be a really good fit for our town and for our downtown. I think it's also worth mentioning that one thing we probably all have in common is an extraordinary respect for our rural character, our open spaces, our farmland, our forests. And I, for one, think it's a great idea to keep the town growing at a reasonable pace, but to try to concentrate that development in our already developed downtown, as opposed to putting housing out in rural spaces. So I want to try to keep this presentation brief, so I'll pass it to Ari. Ari's our architect and a fine one at that.
Thanks, Josh. My name's Ari Goldstein. My company is called Substrate Architecture. I'm the architect of this project. I met Josh about 5 years ago when he was personally delivering groceries. And so we'll jump right in. This is a drawing I did for the last planning board meeting, which is all of the facades on the Route 20 and 22 corridor, starting at the top left with the mansion and each building up to Meisner's here, and then starting here with the church, you recognize a brewery, and going all the way up to Napa. So what I did to make this drawing was photograph each facade from across the street and then trace it, and then I used a satellite image and scaling the doors and the windows to make sure that everything aligns. What I think is interesting about this, well, a couple of things. One is our building is the second one from the right on the top. It's not the largest, as you can see. It is the tallest because the zoning recently changed to allow taller buildings in the commercial district, which is really just the Route 20-22 corridor. But obviously Midtown Mall is on its street facade, nearly 3 times the size of our street facade. So our building actually, I think, will be the third largest after so you have Midtown Mall, you have the bowling alley, and then you have Valley Plaza, which is actually these two buildings. The other thing that I think is really interesting and important here is that it's pretty eclectic. You have what's maybe the smallest building in town, the internet service provider, next to a church, next to a brewery. So this is pretty eclectic. You also have buildings like the bowling alley that's now used as a fuel supplier, and an old motel that's now used as an apartment building. So there's really a variety here, both in scale and use. And you have buildings where Josh's grocery store is a great example. It's a single-family residence now being used as a grocery store. So there's a lot of variety here. But I think what's most, and there are some architecturally interesting buildings, the brewery, the mansion, even the bowling alley, and some of the single-family houses. But what I think New Lebanon is most famous for and most well known for, particularly in architecture, is Mount Lebanon and the Shaker tradition. These are buildings, these are drawings from HAB's survey, which is a historic American building survey. The Parks Department, when it was formerly called the Department of the Interior, in the 1930s started documenting historic buildings around the country. So some of the most important buildings around the country were drawn by architects, and they capture a lot of details. Some buildings are no longer standing, or this is the old stone barn as it stood before the roof. I don't know if it burned down or fell off, but before it was ruined. And then these are details from the Shaker Meeting House at the mouth of the cornice, and some of the other, and the eaves, and the North End Laundry. I tried to use this in designing the building, use the Shaker ideals, which are, I think the most important ones are proportion, simplicity, and attention to detail. Some of the elements that we have in our building that are similar are the the courtyard, which wraps a common space, dormers, single hung windows, sliding barn doors. And I think this building is particularly interesting because it also is mixed use, even though it's 200 years old. Similarly, commercial, most likely on the bottom with people living above. It's pretty classic. And then they've got the cupola, which allows light in. So in designing the building, I followed the comprehensive plan carefully and tried to incorporate the best qualities of the local architecture into a new building. I also found some local examples. Shaker Hancock Village, I think they did a great job with restoring some of the old buildings and some new structures that are in character. This is a local barn. I really like the roof makeup and how it evolved over time. We use some of that character in our design. And then this is a newer building. It's also a brewery, and it has large windows and that same kind of monitor roof and a covered porch with no columns, which was a little bit unique to the Shakers. This is the view from basically right outside, where you see how the building fits into the neighborhood. It is next to one of the smallest buildings in the town, but it's also set back from the road, and it has a bit of a stepped scale, so that the large facade is not at the front. There's a deep porch and a low slope roof that connects to the second and third floor. So the grocery's in the front, and then the residential's in the back. These are the facades of the building. This is the front facing the road. You can see the symmetry, the small windows, the big barn doors, the gooseneck barn lamps. And then in the back of the building, you can see a fairly different character facing a lawn, essentially, with smaller scale and more variation in the roofs. This is the parking lot side. You can see that the first floor apartments are set back from the road, and they each have a little garden, and then there's planters in front of them, so they're not right in the parking lot with their front door. This is the grocery entry. This screen's a little blasted, so losing a little bit of detail here. But and then this is the Tilden roadside, where on the top we have a residential courtyard. Although the site looks pretty flat, it's actually got some slope to it. So the first floor of the residential is up a few steps on the Tilden roadside, and there's a ramp which actually does a nice job of separating the residential from the commercial. And then there's a loading dock that's set pretty far back. Basically the back of the grocery store is the loading dock on Tilden Road. These are the four corners of the building. So this is the view on the top left, in front of the library, looking at the side of the grocery store with a little bit of a loading dock in the back there. And then on the top right, this is the residential entry, which has a covered porch and sort of different windows for the lobby, which allows a lot of light in. This is more the parking for the grocery store on this side. This is the edge of the loading dock and some of that residential plaza. We have sort of a back entry here with light parking, so people can come down on this ramp, and that also creates further separation from the loading dock for safety. And then this is the turn into the parking lot. Here we have the landscape plan. It's pretty hard to see, but we have various deciduous trees. Here, I'll just go to the next page, which has pictures of the trees. We have maples, birch, oak, redbud, and then along the property line, here along the parking lot, we have arbor vitae, which is a dense evergreen that works as a screening, fence. We have some details of the trash enclosure, which is the same materials as the building. It's a party board clapboard. And then we have the cable railing, same type of sign that the grocery currently has. And then at the top, you can see a little bit of how the apartments are set back from the road, and there's some terracing of the landscape. For lighting, Sarah Schnarr is our lighting designer. She's here. She lives very close to the project, and these are kind of the three principles that she laid out: safety and security, sustainability, and ease of maintenance, and aesthetically pleasing. One of the big concepts is called dark sky, which is basically not having light pollution. So on the left, you see kind of the classic parking lot light, which is putting light in every direction. It's very bright and it makes it difficult to see the sky. On the right, you have a downward light that casts light only where needed. Obviously, we need light in the parking lot and on the paths. And this is sort of the three types of lighting. We have the parking lot lighting on poles with a downlight fixture. In the pathway, we have shorter poles, and we also have some small kind of bollards that just light the paths. And then the building itself, we've lit the signage. We have a cupola, which we're lighting inside, and then the entries, obviously. These are some of the fixture types. We also have this hanging light fixture in the courtyard, and lights in the rails. And then we did a study of the light output just to make sure that we're not lighting anybody else's property or having excess light in any location. That's kind of the quickest overview I can give you of the building from a design side. So I'll turn it over to Brendan, who is our engineer.
Brendan Becker, Lamont Engineers, for the engineering firm that was hired to design the exciting part, the water, wastewater, stormwater, and review the traffic. So that's what I get to talk about. Site plan, kind of hard to see from this view, but as already talked about, building's kind of on the southwest corner of the parcel. Traffic will enter and exit from both Route 20, 22, and there will be an entrance and exit off of Tilden Road. Regarding water, so there's an existing well on the site that was evaluated to see if it's a viable source as a water source for the project. And that evaluation included testing it for both quality and quantity. So quality, a full Part 5 test was conducted in order to comply with DOH regulations. Some treatment will be needed in order to comply with DOH regulations, including chlorination, and a reverse osmosis treatment system. Beyond that, the quantity was tested, so the well was pumped continuously for 3 days straight, and the neighboring wells were monitored during that pump test to make sure that we are not affecting anybody else's wells in the surrounding area with any significance, and it proved that we are not. The other thing that was reviewed in the existing well is what is the actual source of this well. So a hydrogeologist was hired to do that pump test and to do that evaluation. Based on the soil borings that were conducted on the site, and actually they reviewed a number of the wells in the surrounding area, they determined that this well is pulling from a confined aquifer. So to elaborate on that a little bit, what is a confined aquifer? An unconfined aquifer is basically a well that's drawing from a gravel source, gravel material, soil, and it could be drawing from some nearby surface water. It could be drawing from a nearby stream, it could be drawing from a lake. But this is based on their evaluation, this is a confined aquifer. So there's a dense clay layer based on the soil borings. There's approximately 10 feet or 50 feet of clay on top of the bedrock for which this well is drawing the water from. So that clay layer confines this aquifer from drawing from any nearby groundwater sources, and they determined that the actual recharge for this well is coming from somewhere much further upland. So even more reassurance that this well will not only not affect nearby wells, but also won't be affected by any nearby pollution factors such as septic systems or other wells. Regarding wastewater, we have a pretty extensive wastewater treatment system for the project. Basically, it's a kind of a tiny little wastewater treatment plant that's has this separate processes of more of like an advanced septic system. So primary treatment, which means removing the solids. So the solids of the wastewater are getting removed by conventional septic tanks. Various different septic tanks pulling wastewater from different portions of the building will remove the solids. The effluent from those septic tanks will then flow to an Arenco AX Max treatment system. So it's kind of doing the same thing that a septic system would do in a leach field. That's providing that aerobic treatment of the wastewater prior to it then getting pumped to the rear of the site. Again, this didn't come in well on the PowerPoint, but the septic tanks collect the solids. From there, the effluent then flows to the southwest corner of the site, which then gets pumped back to the northeast corner, at which point it goes through the Arenco treatment units, and then it goes through actually a UV treatment system. So we are treating the wastewater to a quality that allows us to discharge it directly to a stream. That's what we would be permitted to do. But in an extra step, because there were some concerns from the planning board regarding our wastewater system generating any additional water flowing off of the site, the project is actually going to include an underground stormwater retention system, which would then allow that wastewater to then infiltrate into the ground on the site, so no additional water is being created to leave the site. And again, just some more details on how that treatment system works and the storm tech units that are going to be used for that underground dispersal system. That's a picture of this Arenco system that we are going to be using. We've used these on several other projects in the past. Pretty minimal impact. It's just a green box that gets buried on site. Stormwater. So the majority of the front portion of the site, so the 20 side of the site, is being considered as part of the redevelopment portion of it. We get a certain credit for the existing impervious surface that's on the site, and that existing redevelopment area is going to flow to the existing catch basin on Route 20 and then discharge across the street. The rear portion of it is going to be treated with various different methods. Some of it is getting treated with tree plantings, so any of the tree plantings that we're providing will provide some treatment of the additional impervious that's generated from the project, along with also some planter boxes on the east side that will treat the runoff from the roofs. And the parking lot is getting treated to a forebay and an infiltration basin, which is basically it's collecting the water, it's letting it sit there for a little bit until it disperses down into the ground. And we did a bunch of testing to ensure that the ground is able to handle that for treatment. We did have a sub-consultant do a traffic study for the project, and they reviewed existing traffic flows versus post-project traffic flows. Basically Route 20, 22 has plenty of capacity. It's not going to have any impact on the existing traffic flows on the main road. And they showed there would be, a minor impact on Tilden Road, obviously, because there's not much traffic on there, but the minor impact is causing seconds of a delay at the traffic stop going to the intersection of 20 and 22. So that's really the quick review of all the engineering aspects. And as I mentioned before, we're going to have an entrance exit located where the existing entrance only is on the east side of the site. The existing exit only on the west side will be closed off, and there will be an entrance exit off of Tilden Road, and that's showing the proposed path for the trucks to get to the loading dock, which I don't know if Ari mentioned that or not. The loading dock is actually enclosed within the building itself to provide some screening and some barriers for noise. And that's pretty much all we got. Great.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion to open the public hearing for SEQRA on the Tilden Commons project. Can I get a second?
Second.
Jim Carroll has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The motion carries 7-0-0. The public hearing is now open. We are going to start with our first person, and that is Lucky Abby Shoes.
I brought cookies, so.
Thank you, Abby, for the cookies.
And I will say they're leftover cookies, paid for, but the town paid for the ingredients for a newcomers meeting. And then there were leftovers, couldn't remember the freezer all week. So, my thoughts are a little bit scattered, I tried to make them all pretty. One of the things that you have stated that you were evaluating as part of SEQRA, I just keep calling it SEQRA even though technically it's SEQRA, is the consistency with the community's plans and character. And this has been a town that has had a very, very long history of innovation and a very long history of development. And then things in the past 50 or so years kind of filtered off and there was not a whole lot of development. And we lost things like the grocery store that had been here and a lot of businesses that had been here. And the towns that managed to keep their stores and their downtowns, like for example, Chatham, there's a whole lot more vibrancy in the downtown area and a whole lot more people walking around. And that's sort of part of the sidewalk thing that hopefully will be happening soon. But if you look at what the town has been asking for, the people of the town have been asking for, in every conversation that's happened in at least the last 9 years that I've been living here, have been, we need a grocery store. We need a grocery store because it takes us half an hour to go to a grocery store if we're not buying groceries here in town. And also there's a very distinct lack of housing. And that housing is affordable housing for young families, affordable housing for people that are working here in town. I mean, there was a guy that used to work at Mavericks that literally the only apartment that he could find that he could afford was an hour and 20 minutes away. He doesn't work there anymore because he couldn't afford to drive back and forth, 2.5-hour commute to burn a very nice wage from the nice people of Mavericks. But that's the type of person we want to be in our community. We want to support that development, and we want to support people that are working here so that they can also live here and really be a true part of the town. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the record, Abby, that was great with the microphone. I'd like everybody to follow her example. We're trying to correct that. The community session last week was a good example. I think we have another, is this Mr. Shoes?
Thank you. 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to ride my bike from Buffalo to Albany. And in that trip, I saw towns that paid attention to their downtowns and to needed infrastructure changes, and I saw towns that didn't. And I would like New Lebanon to be one of the towns that pays attention to their downtown and makes improvements. I was not prepared to address the seeker aspects of this, but I think the economic aspects are pretty important, and I think we need to do things in this town to make housing more affordable, that attract businesses, and make some improvements. It's a pretty great place right now, and I think we can make it even better. Thank you.
Amy Brookman.
So a lot of things I'm going to say now are things that I have heard from before. Tonight Brendan said a lot of things that we haven't heard over the last year, so it's going to sound odd, but this is what I came from. Basically, I grew up in New Lebanon. I'm a current resident and a property owner. After graduating, I left the town, and 10 years later decided to come back. I wanted to be in New Lebanon. I wanted to spend time with my family, and I enjoy the beauty and calmness of our small town. Who can deny that a drive up West Street on a mid-fall day does not take your breath away with the stunning foliage it provides? I'm an abutter, so as an abutting property owner to the land where the Tilden Commons is proposing to build, I do have some concerns and would ask that the planning board declare a positive declaration for the seeker. There are a number of environmental issues that need to be further analyzed. While I enjoy this town, I feel that the developers of the project are focused on the community character and what the buildings look like. But again, I heard a lot more information than I've heard in the past year tonight. It's very important to focus on the environmental impacts of the on-site systems and their impact on New Lebanon. Let's not forget this is a 41-unit building along with a large grocery store and is located on the principal aquifer, which provides drinkable groundwater to the town. Then I just had some questions. What will the water quality impacts be from the wells, for the well withdrawals, the potential potential contamination risks in the septic fluid discharge? Is this compliant with what the Department of Health requires? What is being done for groundwater protection? We kind of addressed that tonight. What will the air quality be from the potential septic system odors or wrinkle emissions? Will the Tilden well and septic system adversely impact the neighboring wells and leach fields? If so, what recourse will be available to those negatively impacted? My understanding is that a waiver was being requested for the requirement that there must be at least a 20-foot separation between the well and the septic systems. How can a waiver even be considered when you're talking about people's drinking water? Without public water and sewer, it's extremely important for the seeker to focus on the environmental impacts, feasibility, and mitigation of the on-site systems. Based on that, I respectfully request that the planning board declare a positive declaration so potential significant environmental impacts can be identified, and request a draft environmental impact study as is necessary to provide more information on the concerns of groundwater protection, wastewater disposal, and potential contamination of neighboring properties. Thank you.
Bonnie Lychak.
Just quickly, Amy had a typo, it's 200 feet, not 20. Okay. My comments are from myself and Margaret Bruckman. I deleted a lot because of the time frame. The project impacts are vast and not fully vetted or efforts made to remediate. We have 9 issues and sent a letter with more detail. We're requesting this application receive a positive declaration and prepare a draft environmental impact statement. The project engineer in July, December, and April stated the site separability of the well and water required by the Department of Health regulations could not be met. No information has been submitted to any agency for approval of the required public water system. The applicant said after 10 months they will seek a waiver of the site separability. Though the applicant has addressed letters to the Columbia County Health Department in its submissions to the Planning Board, Michael DeRusso and Sean Howard, in a call on May 29th, we were advised the county has received none of these letters and neither of those engineers has worked for the county for a long time. The county has no county engineer and contracts out these services. They stated they had no submissions by Tilden from Lamont Engineering for approvals and/or waivers for a New York State approved public water system. The county said any correspondence seeking approvals requires submissions sent by certified mail. On what grounds can the applicant make assertions of a safe drinking water source for this project or that a waiver will be issued deviating from DOH regs? There have been no submissions detailing upgrades to systems to avoid contamination. The applicant's SEQRA form states the project is on a principal aquifer. The contamination of this aquifer, because the applicant desires a variance of protective standards, should not be easily assumed as obtainable or as a normal occurrence. We believe the town owes all of its residents the greatest protection of their water sources. Skip. The hydrology report does not provide adequate data to determine if there is a broad shallow cone of depression or if the aquifer can transmit water quickly and efficiently. This project could have a very detrimental impact on all parcels that are currently a part of this groundwater source with its protected use of 11,000 gallons per day. The water table is at 4 to 6 feet below grade per the SEQRA form and at 3 feet below grade during a perk test in the spring. The high water table was cited in the multiple town engineering reviews as an issue for the septic tanks and the effluent. In early May, DEC had no submissions for the sewer. We do not believe the board has enough info on the proposed sewer system to ensure the environmental impacts are not catastrophic. The town is fully aware of the special hydrological conditions of the area in the parcel. A 30,000 gallon water tank will be under the building to service the sprinkler system. The installation of this tank and other aspects of construction will require dewatering. Dewatering is typically pumped to a designated discharge point and then released into a body of water. This issue is not addressed in any of the submissions and could be expected to have additional environmental impacts. The 42-foot tractor trailers require widening Tilden Road. The library will be impacted with loss of parking, the site plan has the grocery traffic circling the building and the tenants enter the apartments through a back entrance that must cross traffic. Done. Am I done?
As we go down the list, I'm going to apologize if I butcher anybody's name. If I have, please clarify it at the microphone. So we're going to give it a shot. Melissa Francoeur.
I am a property owner in the town of 11 who lives on Route 20, just past the church. I appreciate the need for affordable housing, and I understand the community's interest in having a grocery store closer to town. However, I still have concerns about this project, its proposed location, presenting significant environmental and community impacts that warrant further review. I echo what Amy said. A lot of what was said tonight, specifically on the groundwater and wastewater, was worded differently in the past. The project is over a principal aquifer that serves as important groundwater resource. The developers have stated that they will seek a waiver from the New York State Department of Health regarding the required 200-foot separation distance between the public water supply and the septic system. The fact that a waiver is being requested raises legitimate questions about groundwater protection and whether the impacts to neighboring wells have been fully evaluated. The hydrogeologic study appears to have limitations. Only a small number of nearby wells were actually monitored during testing, 5. There's a lot more abutters than just 5 people. And the report acknowledges interference from off-site pumping. While the report concludes that impacts are unlikely, that conclusion is based on limited data. I respectfully ask the board to carefully consider whether sufficient information exists to determine that neighboring wells and the aquifer will not be adversely affected. Third, this area is characterized by shallow groundwater, wet soils, and periodic flooding. As a nearby property owner, I have witnessed these conditions firsthand in my own yard with flooding. I am concerned that additional impervious surfaces, stormwater infrastructure, and a wastewater system could alter drainage patterns and potentially impact neighboring properties. Finally, traffic, noise, and public safety deserve additional consideration. I live right on Route 20, and the amount of traffic is, especially this time of year, is almost unbearable. Adding 41 units in a grocery store will increase vehicle trips, delivery traffic, and noise level. For these reasons, I respectfully request that the planning board issue a positive declaration and require the preparation of a draft environmental impact study so these potential impacts can be evaluated further before any final decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you. Al Visotski?
So when my son got married a few years ago, he and his new wife sought to rent an apartment here or a house or whatever in Lebanon. There was nothing available. They wound up renting in Nassau and eventually bought a home in Niverville, where my grandchildren now live and will go to school at Ichabod Crane. We've seen declining enrollment in this town in schools. We also see that there are not enough people in this town who care enough about the schools to actually vote to approve the budget. And I think if we don't have more people in the town who have a stake in the school system, we're going to see, eventually see the schools cease to exist here. And our children will be going to Berlin or Chatham or wherever. I think we need to do something to allow young families to start. Like my son and his wife, most families start renting before they can afford to buy a home. And my wife and I rented for 4 years before we were able to afford to buy. There really isn't much opportunity to do that in Lebanon. It's not really possible for families to put down roots here. And in the long run, I think if we don't do something, whether it's this or something else, to have affordable housing in this town, it's going to be a town of retirees, Airbnbs, and summer people, and that'll be it. Thanks.
This person only had one name down. Is it Tistru?
Thank you. This is coming from me as a resident of the town, not as the town supervisor. I have intentionally been completely uninvolved in this project, and I have not attended nor followed any planning board meetings, as I am a town board member and this is a project in front of the planning board, and I wanted to maintain separation of those two boards. That said, tonight is an opportunity for residents to be heard on SEQRA, and I am here as a resident to speak at this public hearing. For SEQRA, one of the things the planning board looks at is community character. First, I'd like to look at the consistency with community plans. This project will bring affordable workforce housing that is desperately needed for our seniors and working class residents. This will increase the population of our school and the taxes that they receive. There is misinformation out there that this is low-income housing and would increase the special needs population in our school, but that is absolutely false. The amount that rents will be, $1,100 for a one-bedroom, $1,300 for a two-bedroom, are in a range that someone like myself with a middle-class income could afford. This is not Section 8 housing. It is not low-income housing. Affordable housing is defined as not spending more than 30% of your income on your housing costs. There is even a level that is called affordable housing for millionaires. So we must not confuse affordable housing with low-income housing. The town board, as the legislative body, has adjusted our zoning to ask for projects just like this one to occur exactly in the area where this project is being proposed. We have asked for commercial at the bottom and residential on the top. and to allow taller buildings and more density in our downtown area. This project is completely in line with our comprehensive plan, our pro-housing designation, and other guiding documents for the planning board to reference that the town board has adopted. We recently did a pilot project on housing and conservation, and what was apparent is that the community wants to maintain the rural rolling hills on County 5 and Canaan Road and West Street, and they want density of development in this 2022 corridor. And they talk about specific projects exactly like this: commercial on the bottom, 2 levels of housing above. Second, I would like to look at the consistency with community character, the other part of community character. So right now we have an abandoned building that is falling apart and decrepit. Although there are many of those throughout town, I don't think that's what we want to define as our community character that we are looking for. These renderings are gorgeous. It is going to be a beautiful building that is completely in line with the other buildings around it. The architect pointed out is the 3rd largest, not the 1st, not even the 2nd. There are 2 other buildings that are larger than this proposed project. So yes, it is taller because we just changed the zoning. Like, this is the first application in front of the board for this area since we changed the zoning. I hope that Midtown Mall and Valley Plaza and the bowling alley and others follow suit. But if this planning board denies the project or makes a positive deck, we are going to send a message opposite of what the legislative body has said, that is, we don't want this kind of development here. So I would encourage us to look at the community character around and let it become renovated, let it be an operating building, let it increase tax funds to the town, to the school. And finally, I do want to look at septic, water, obviously environmental. So let the Department of Health do their job, right? This planning board is not the Department of Health. So if you declare a neg deck and you approve the project, and there is some snafu where the Department of Health says, this can't happen the way that you're proposing it to happen, it's not gonna happen. The Department of Health is the department that is there to look at the septic, the water, ensure that everything is in regulation. And speaking of positive decks, negative decks, I wanna remind this planning board, most of you were on the board when Dollar General came in. Dollar General has the same thing that this commercial grocery store will have: a loading dock, truck traffic, truck fumes, whatever environmental things you could see, negative declaration from this planning board. Mobile home expansions, adding 10 lots, 20 lots, housing, septic needs, well needs, negative declaration from this planning board. Darrow School, right up the road, has more than 86 residential people living there, and they have a septic and they have a water. Negative declaration is for a chemical plant. It is for industrial uses that have oil spilling out into the ground. A positive declaration is not for housing, and it is not for a grocery store. So I strongly encourage this planning board to continue the path that you have done with the Dollar General, with mobile home expansion, with other housing and grocery store applications, and declare a negative declaration under SEQRA. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a resident. I agree with everything that's been said in support of the project. We need more housing. Please let us build more housing. Thank you.
Michael Garrity. Yes, no, maybe? We'll give him a time to come back in from outside. Holly Clark.
Good evening, my name is Holly Clark. I am also a lifelong resident here. I too grew up here. I left and I came back. Contrary to what they say, you can go home again. I am home. I'm concerned with this project. At first, you know, when it started, I was kind of on the fence. We do need more housing. I'm not opposed to progress. but I'm concerned with how much water that is going to be used, it is going to be needed to be treated. How much water, do we know how much water is currently used on that plot? It's anticipated we'll have 11,000 gallons of use per day. Nice graphic on the wells and the treatment, but we are experiencing more weather events, and as you know, treatment plants get overloaded. And that's a concern of mine. Where's the 11,000 gallons per day coming from? You said somewhere upstream. Sorry. Somewhere upstream. Is that the springs? Is it across the street from the historic wetlands? And furthermore, this project cannot meet the 200-foot separation from the septic and property line. So I am adamantly opposed to a waiver on this issue to avoid contamination. And I really am concerned about the historic wetlands across the street. Again, if we have one of the frequent storms that overloads the water system, where's that water going to go? Another concern I had, so lesser concern, but still a concern, is there room for 110 parking spots here? As I said, I'm not opposed to progress. Originally, this was supposed to be 20 housing units, which I feel like, yeah, we can use that in town. I feel like once you double that and you have a grocery market, you've outweighed your space. You've gone outside your space. I don't think we can support this, and I would strongly urge for a positive declaration on the seeker.
Christian Gates.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Christian Gates. I'm an associate with Keenan Bean, and our office is special counsel to the New Lebanon Central School District. My colleague Judson Siebert was here before, previously I think spoke before the board. We submitted letters dated September 10th. So I want to be clear, our client is not opposed to the application nor supportive of it. Our client takes no position against in support. Our client just simply wants to ask some questions and respectfully a seat at the table to address some SEQRA concerns, as well as some other concerns that have effects on SEQRA. Namely, I'm here to speak about the fiscal impact on community services. This is found under section 18.4 of your full EAF. I did review some previous discussions, noted that this was a concern, so I wanted to speak on that. So fiscal impacts on the New Lebanon Central School District are impacts on the community services that the school district can provide. One big question I think that we have is, will there be a pilot? And for those that don't know, a pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes. It's a pre-negotiated lump sum payment by a developer with the municipality, and that will directly impact community services that the New Lebanon Central School District is able to provide. How does this affect it? It shrinks essentially the pie of taxable assessments. This shifts the property tax burden onto owners of non-exempt properties. It does this by reducing the overall taxable rates, which the school district's taxes can be levied. Again, a clear impact on community services. So really our client just wants to know if there's going to be a pilot, and if so, have a seat at the table to address impacts to community services, which ties into students, how many students there will be. I heard earlier that there's going to be 87 residents. We'd like to see a school-aged calculation. This is typically done through the Rutgers report. This will allow them to assess their needs and how much they will need to address community services, expansion of facilities, purchasing more supplies, materials. It typically costs at least $20,000 a year to educate one student. As some of you may know, in the budget that was recently proposed, there was a $133,000 reduction in instruction. That's directly tied to teachers' aides. That item got slashed. There was a very little increase in state aid. So again, more students means more community services. Is the school district going to be able to afford that? I would also like to talk about busing and transportation. That is a clear part of SEQRA as well. I understand that there was a traffic study, but I don't believe it addressed school bus pickup, which I think is a concern. And again, just want to have that be a part of the discussion, for the school district to be a part of that discussion. It's my understanding that typically buses don't go on private property, and so there would be pickup and drop off from the roadway. And we just want to make sure that there's a traffic study and it looks at that to make sure that all of the children are safe. So again, our client, the New Lebanon School District, is not for or against the applicant, but we just want to be approached to have these discussions, namely the impacts to community services. The district is facing a financial squeeze, and so the ability to be at the table and have a discussion regarding a pilot, regarding how many students there will be, will allow it to better analyze its fiscal future. As well as transportation, again, new bus routes, is that going to be needed? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Adelia Moore.
Good evening. I'd like to recognize all the hard work that's gone into this project, both from the investment and design portion and from the conscientious work of the planning board. And obviously, you've got a lot of people interested in what happens. Our town is better for all the ways that people involve themselves in its present and in its future. I support the comments that were made about attracting young families, about the comprehensive plan, density, architecture, and so forth. But I wanted to talk about a couple of other things. I was one of the members of the Room for Both committee. I represented the Climate Smart Community committee on that, and that was, as many of you may know, a project that studied how, with public hearings and public input, how to combine both development and conservation. And I think it's challenging to do that in a central downtown, but I think this project has really addressed the rural character, the architectural and historical tradition, and actually done a better job, as someone said, than has been done historically in New Lebanon in the last probably 40 or 50 years. The other thing I wanted to talk about is people my age. Now, I'm a retiree who did move here from out of town, and I know not everyone is enthusiastic about our population, but I've contributed as much as I have been able to the community and tried to make it a better place. But I'm thinking of people, a lot of conversations, people my age, are about how to age in place, how to stay in a place you already have a community, already have ties, know where things are, and maybe a family. And if you're an older person in a house that you can no longer manage, where are you going to rent an apartment? This is an obvious solution to that, along with young families. And also, intergenerational housing like that is one of the best things that humans can have and do. And finally, I'd like to talk for a minute about what the losses might be if we don't go ahead with this. What will be built on that plot of land, if not the Tilden Project? Where will seniors go who can't handle their houses and want to stay in town? Where will people live who work in New Lebanon? We may lose our reputation, such as we have it, as a desirable town for likely candidates for affordable housing. We've heard someone talk about that already. We will use potentially a much larger taxpayer than anyone else so far in town and lose the chance of an expanded grocery store. Change is never easy. I'm a human who's lived 76 years and I'm a retired psychologist. I know how hard it can be, but the alternative could easily be worse. Dwindling population, a dwindling economy, a downtown with abandoned buildings and empty lots. So let's rejoice in anything that adds value to our economic base and to our community and that allows more people to benefit from living or staying here. Let's not be naysayers. Let's say, how can we make this work? Thank you.
I thought everybody came for the cookies tonight, not for us. You guys don't come out the third Wednesday. Sarah Schoner.
I'm Sarah Schoner, And my wife and I bought the triple nickel 5 years ago, and just last month we surrendered our Massachusetts FEs and became full-time residents. So I want to thank the board for their service, because I've been on similar boards and it's not easy and it can be thankless. So thank you for what you're doing. We moved here because we love it here, and one of the things that we love is the downtown character. I was a lighting designer. I was actually a lighting designer for this project, as was mentioned. It was a delight to be asked. I have 20 years in architectural background in Boston, mostly before I came here. And I think the applicant has done a great job going through a very complicated process. And I also think it's awesome that there's so many people in the town here to talk about the process and their care about it. That being said, I think the comments made by especially Tistria and Adelia just recently are the ones I would point to as well. I think the comprehensive plan basically says this is what we'd like. There's a need for it very clearly. As much as I'd love to look Josh in the eye and say I always buy my groceries at the market, I just today had to drive to Pittsfield because I have a big group coming and it's not economical for me to shop close by. As gas prices get higher and higher, that's a concern for me. I love being able to walk across the street and be able to support all the businesses. I'm lucky enough to say that I can basically walk across the street to a bunch of them. With all of that being said, I think that this is definitely positive for the town. And I think that based on some of the other projects that have been progressed in the town, this is easily a yes in my mind, and I would urge you to give a positive declaration, a negative declaration. It's a trick. I am for the project, and I think that you should give a negative declaration. It seems fine. Thank you so much.
It's New York State, it has to be opposite, right? It has. Welcome to New York. Thank you. Chantel Schoenauer.
So as said, we are newer residents to New Lebanon, and we have chosen this community. And I just want to echo my support as well for the project, and I just concur with everything Sarah just said.
Thank you. David Himmelstein.
So I've been in the town long enough to remember when the stone barn still had a roof, and to have danced at the showboat. Unfortunately, that means that I'm also old enough to be worrying about what happens when I can't live independently in a single-family home, far from services and far from other things. So to me, the housing proposed in what will be with the sidewalk construction, increasingly walkable area with ready access to grocery is a vital community asset. And to put further obstacles in its way does a real disservice, particularly to seniors, but to many others in the town. And the other thing I'll observe that in my about 60 years now in the town, when I first came here, there were 3 houses on my road. Since then, there have been 6 others built or under construction. The alternative to increasing density in our downtown is not the maintenance of rural character of our town, but the sacrificing of the rural character of our town. That it becomes a suburban town increasingly, not a rural town. So unless we make way for density in our really one area of density in the town, what we're saying is that we're for the suburbanization of our town, and yeah, that means it's easier to figure out wells and septic, but again, as Tistria said, that's really for the Department of Health, and as a public health professional with some now 50 years of experience, they are both the appropriate authority on that and the one with expertise. Thank you.
Dennis Burek.
Good evening. Like several other people, I'm going to make the housing situation personal. When my daughter's marriage broke up and she moved up here with her daughter, you wanted nothing more than to have your child and grandchild live nearby. She could not find an apartment. Look though she may, she ended up in Williamstown. Still close enough, right? But now she does a reverse commute, 30 minutes, in order to work here in New Lebanon. So we need the housing. Two, to the grocery store. Simply stated, that grocery store is a gem. A gem. And as a senior who's getting more and more reluctant to drive to Pittsfield and Chatham, to come 7 minutes to the grocery store and get fresh local produce from the New Leaf Farm, baked goods made by local men and women who work out of their home, to get takeout and the basics is simply unbelievable. So no longer going to Pittsfield and Chatham all the time. If they are able to expand that grocery store, I believe it only enhances its impact on what used to be, I believe it was called a food desert in New Lebanon. All right, lastly, a very brief story. I was born and raised in Utica, about 90 miles west, okay? Loved growing up there. In its heyday in the 50s and 60s, Utica had 100,000 people. A vibrant downtown, great ethnic neighborhoods. Today, 60,000 people. Deteriorating neighborhoods and few job opportunities. Why did that happen? Well, there's lots of reasons, but when I was pursuing my master's degree, I did a paper on that and went to Utica and interviewed several of the political leaders and said, hey guys, I heard rumors that this company wanted to come, this developer wanted to come, and they were always blocked. Why was that? And their answers, even though they were off the record and they were embarrassed, they would say, Dennis, we liked Utica the way it was. We didn't want it to change. Some of them had self-interest, but in retrospect, they all knew that they had made a mistake. And so as I sit here today, or I stand here today and look at this board, I hope that if your answer is no on going forward with this project, that when someone interviews you 20 years from now, your rationale won't be some of the same reasons that those political leaders in Utica told me. Thank you.
Anna Duban?
Hello, thanks everyone for all the work on the project, all of your work as a planning board. I live at the end of Tilden Road. We are butters, we're directly across. We, as much as we're talking about it being in a very downtown area, we have over 33 acres, mostly wetland. We have the 1 acre pond, we have streams, we have a spring. And so my concern really is the water quality piece of it at the forefront. There's a lot that is, that would change quality of life and this and that, but really the playing for keeps is the water quality. And so I guess what I haven't really understood or have heard addressed are the sort of many different things that would enter, through that effluent that I don't think are being treated or accounted for, like microplastics, pharmaceuticals. I don't know how, household contaminants, are dealt with. Salting, de-icing that might be a much more increased with the uses. And how, I think our pond is probably less than 200 feet from the property. We're on the side where the septic and the system is located. And so I guess my question or my ask for the planning board is to really consider those different aspects, and maybe there are answers that I don't know, but I feel like those are emerging pieces, much like something like PFAS was emerging and not regulated previously. So I'm concerned that things like that, because everyone who's washing their clothes and with all the plastics and all those things going in, how those then impact things like the pond, the wetland. We have a stream that has caddisfly larvae, which means it's extremely clean. We have a pond that's extremely vibrant with turtles and herons and all the rest. I also wonder about the hydrology impacts. I know that's been addressed more, and how that might, change things like the level of the pond. So those are just my concerns as someone who's directly there. Thanks.
We have two people left. If anybody else would like to sign up, please come see Courtney. If anybody's had an urge to speak. Judy Sabrit.
I was supposed to sign up. I signed up.
I guess so. You're right here.
Oh, I thought that was the sign-in sheet.
I'm here. Okay, well, this is great. I didn't have pencil and paper, so I made a text to my son. I hope he's okay with that. Because I accidentally pushed send. Okay, so what the heck is she talking about? Let me find the game. I'm sorry. It'll only take a second or two. Okay. Ooh, where did it go? Okay, I'll just have to remember. Okay, first of all, I love it that we are making more housing. We do need it. However, and I'm sure you all have the research that shows how much we need it and for how many people do we need it, but 40 feels really big to me. And I'm wondering if the plan could start with one unit built with Dorothy or 10. I don't know, there's 3 buildings. And then, if it fills up, great, we'll build another one. But I'd hate to see us build something for 40 families and half of them stay empty. So I'd rather see us move gradually to fulfill that. I mean, I am concerned about, the fact that we have to draw families with children or we are going to lose our schools. The second thing is, as far as the families in those apartments go, I had a hard time seeing what it was. I know there's going to be lawns, but children need little backyards. Are we going to let them fence in their yard, things like that? Little details, probably we're not at that stage yet, but I'd like to suggest building for the families with the children that we need so desperately, a modest little playground. Because if the family has only one car, Jackford's a long ways to have to cart your kids. So a little modest playground on the property. And let's see what else. Oh, and the little questions. I'm sure, this is probably too early, but like who's going to be in charge of these units? Who's the landlord for these units? And it's going to be nonprofit. That's the other thing. I'm a senior. Seniors that live on a fixed income, if you take the formula 30%, a senior like me would have to make $3,000 a month to have that 30%. 1,000, even for just one bedroom, that 1,100. So what I suggest is that we give that all up. I mean, we can, there could be flexibility. As long as the mortgage is going to be nonprofit, as long as the mortgage gets paid. Let's do something where, let's say instead of a set rent, you pay 30% of your income, kind of like that whole housing thing, but we don't have to get them involved. And if you can't make enough money that way to sustain the mortgage, then just take a certain percentage, because for a senior, I don't know many seniors that make $3,000 a month. Oh, okay, sorry, real quick. I love organic food, I do, but it's very expensive. Even in big places like Guido's, it's very expensive. Can you do a combination? Grocery, shit food? I know.
Cookies.
Town paid for those.
Yeah, the town cookies. Cookies on the town.
Before we hit our last person, I'm gonna circle back and see if there a Michael Garrity that has returned to the room and would like to speak. If you could sign up with Courtney, yep. And while you are doing that, I will call on Bill Hughes.
As in a butter, and one of the few people that did take part in the water test, I know my well was affected. I don't know what other stories they're trying to tell you, but just the fact that my well was affected, what's gonna be my compensation if this goes through? I don't know what else to say.
How was it affected?
My water went down. My level dropped noticeably. So, does it matter?
Yes.
It really doesn't.
2 inches or 2080?
It really doesn't matter. The test shows that my water went down and was affected by this during a test. So this was only a test.
Can I ask, you were included in the report they submitted to us, correct?
Yes.
So the board has that, and the board can find that out. We can circulate that to the board. Thank you for letting us know. Do you have anything else?
The other thing is, I know we lost a grocery store, and the reason it went away, what happens if we have this grocery store and it doesn't make it? We're gonna have an empty building underneath a bunch of apartments. Take it over. What's gonna happen there? So I'm not a believer that we can support a 10,000, is it 10,000 square foot? Yeah, 12,000 square foot grocery store. I just don't believe it.
Thank you. Trina Forte. Sorry. Your name, sir? Yeah. I'll cross you off, yeah. Sorry, Trina.
How many thousands of gallons of wastewater is going to be dumped into that creek, the Willamette Creek? Per day, from that waste treatment?
I think the applicant is collecting those questions, and we'll give them time to answer either later or they'll document it. And I think they've indicated they will maybe provide an FAQ or something from this meeting at our next planning board meeting or thereabouts.
I'm a property owner on that creek, and I have a lot of concerns about this. It's not right. Shouldn't be allowed to do that. On top of it, my well water was also affected. I'm all the way downstream in West Lebanon, right? So my water's been dirty for about 3 weeks now. Horrible. I give it to my geese. I have a bunch of animals over there. So what am I gonna do when I can't feed my animals anything because you guys polluted all the water? And decimated the creek that I try so hard to protect. Are you gonna compensate anybody for that if any adverse things happen? No, you won't. 'Cause it's all about money with you motherfuckers.
Now Trina. I apologize to everybody in the room and on screen. We made it almost so far. Thank you. I appreciate everybody's passion. I appreciate the board. I was on it myself for 7 years, so I can empathize with the pressure that seems to be on you and is on you. I appreciate the applicants because everybody knows New Lebanon wants to thrive and needs more housing to do it. The thing that I've been hearing is that people seem to equate a positive declaration that requires an environmental study with a rejection of the plan, and as you stated, that's not the case. It just means that they will be looking more closely at things that they still have questions about. The planning board will be looking. And that doesn't, to me, seem to be a terrible thing to do. And so I don't know why people would be afraid of that or feel that that kiboshes the project. I was on the planning board 7 years, and many projects get an EIS or they get a more rigorous review. I was on the Hannaford Grocery Planning Board. Their application was, I think, 600 pages long. And we just looked at each section based on what we had questions about. Also, that the people who have expressed concerns, no one has said that they are against more housing, or I don't think, except for a couple of people, have actually said they were against the project. So that's encouraging, that people want this to work out and want things to be done in a way that is best for the town. I also need to say, and this is not to disrespect your history, but there's nothing wrong with public housing. And there are plenty of people in New Lebanon who are struggling economically who could use that. So I just want to speak up for them. And let's see, can I read this? The area where Tilden is, it's a beautiful spot for more housing, but it is challenging for the infrastructure because of the high water table, because of the amount of units in the projected project. It's kind of like fitting something big into something small. It's new, but it's also got challenges created by the size impacting and interfacing with the site. So it's possible that there could be more dense housing in New Lebanon if people would consider outside of the immediate downtown, which would require transportation. I don't have a car, so I would want whoever builds it to have a van service or have the grocery store downtown and some apartments, and then split family housing, perhaps by Walter B. Howard, and have senior housing downtown. But just, there might be potential options that could work. I don't know if the grants that people apply for accept split sites, like having 20 downtown and 20 by Walter B. Howard, etc. But there's a lot more freedom of space and fewer constraints about septic and well further out, a little bit further out from downtown. And I cannot read my scrolly handwriting. I think that's about it, and I wish everyone good luck with this puzzle because New Lebanon wants it to be solved. Thank you. Corey Saul.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your hard work on this project, both the board and for the applicants as well. I've been following the project closely since it was first announced. I feel like a lot of the environmental components have already been addressed, and I'm not a civil engineer, so I'm going to leave that to the experts. That said, I wanted to talk about the community character and the historical aspect of this. The historical record shows that New Lebanon's never really exclusively been rural or residential in character. It's been long home to agriculture, industry, commerce, housing, transportation infrastructure. This very site had a substantial pharmaceutical plant on it, large industrial buildings, a railroad, a water tower that were all part of the landscape. Later on, it was occupied by retail shops, a restaurant, a circus. These are reminders that this is a varied and expansive economic activity area that's long been part of our identity. So with that, multifamily is also not new to the community. There's been apartment buildings, mobile homes, boarding houses, large dormitories that have been here for decades or even centuries. So the commercial activity there is very well established. I'll keep the rest of this brief, but I think that really just want to say that every generation of New Lebanon has inherited a town that was changing. The Shakers, helped form and change it. The railroad changed it. The industry changed it. Route 20 and the nearby I-90 changed it. The decline of our industries changed it as well. The question for the developers to consider is not whether the change will occur, but whether this change is compatible with the character and the history of the community. In my view that it is, and thank you for your time.
Craig Skirkus.
So I wasn't planning to speak. I got a text from a friend who, Ramona Griffin, sent me some questions. She couldn't make it tonight, so she wanted me to read this to y'all. It's been stated that due to the funding sources being pursued for this project, there are specific eligibility requirements governing who may rent the proposed apartments if the project is constructed. If that's the case, I request that the town and the applicant clearly explain these restrictions to the public during the SEQRA review process. Specifically, can the applicant legally reserve even a single apartment for a current resident of New Lebanon, a senior citizen, a young local family, a veteran, or any other locally preferred group? If not, that fact should be clearly disclosed and considered as part of the project's overall public benefit analysis. Many public discussions surrounding this proposal have focused on the need to provide housing opportunities for existing New Lebanon residents. If the funding requirements prohibit giving preference to current residents or any specific demographic group, then the public deserves a clear understanding of who the intended beneficiaries of the project will be and whether the project can realistically achieve the local housing objectives that have been cited in support of it. I respectfully request that the applicant provide a detailed explanation of all occupancy restrictions, income qualifications, tenant selection criteria, and any limitations imposed by federal, state grant, or grant funding sources so that the residents can fully evaluate the project's impact and benefits. Thanks.
Kathy Wilkerson.
I just want to speak really quickly to the question of water and sewer. I grew up in a rural area. We had a septic system. That's all I knew about it. When we bought our house here 35 years ago, I didn't really think about the septic system too much. Well, in 35 years, I know every square inch of the inside of the septic system and the transfer pipe from the house and help dig the trench to replace the waste pipe. And I've learned a lot about water too. And our water has all kinds of stuff in it. So I totally get why people are worried about water and worried about septic and the relationship between the two. And what I have learned in my involuntary exploration is we have a big water crisis in the country because the chemical and oil lobbies, which are the biggest lobbies in Washington, have prevented any kind of regulation on those chemicals. And we don't even know that much about their impact. I have them all in my well in this little rural area in New Lebanon because people used to leave old junk cars in the creek out back. And I've dug up all kinds of garbage in the woods. And it wasn't regulated, and we didn't know all the chemicals that were on all that stuff that's around. So it's worth being concerned that we try to be better now. And so, but I also think, I mean, as much as I've studied this issue in the last 35 years, I'm not an expert, and I think the town board has done a great job, the planning board, on reviewing these applicants in my experience in the past in town. And I think asking rigorous questions about these questions, about the money going into the street, I mean the water going into the street is really important. But I also think it's really complicated, and we don't know all the answers because nobody's done a study on all the chemicals in our clothes, in our everything we buy, and we're doing the best we can to learn. And I think what matters is that the engineers, the planning board, the Department of Health, like Christia said, these people are on it, and we have an open conversation about it. But we need this project. Everybody's spoken to that. I don't need to speak to it. Thank you.
Richard Adago.
Thank you. You know, my wife and I moved up here 20 years ago, and this is really a great, great community. But I have to say that when we first came up, it was really depressing to drive through town on 20. I mean, I was really startled by the pretty abject lack of maintenance of buildings. The business owners didn't seem to care. Everything was run down. It really looked bad. And the great thing is over the 10 years, I think we see some really positive and really attractive development, mostly in the west end of town. You come to that intersection of 20 and 22, and you see the large home that Nancy, I always say Kyle, maybe it's Lyle, refurbished, and the beautiful Shaker meeting building on the other corner, which is all by the church. And then you proceed down the road, and right now there's a building undergoing construction, which I think is going to be a high-end furniture store, if I have that right. And you have then the brewery, right? And then you have what Chantal and your wife have done to your beautiful home. This is the house with the yellow door. And then, of course, you've got the market. And then you've got Blueberry Hill. And that stretch has really developed nicely. And it's really bringing a lot of people into town without it being overbearing. I don't think there's like a traffic jam or anything. And frankly, the development in that part of town, it would be nice to see some of that getting replicated at the other end, with some parts of that strip from like the Mid-City Mall heading east, north, whatever the east isn't so great. But you know, I think that when you look at that first part as you enter into town, you've got two buildings sitting there. There's a building next to the library. I don't know what that's about, who owns that building. If that building were suddenly to fall down, don't want anyone to get injured, that would be a great, great positive development for the town. But really, speaking seriously to Tilden, this is a great project on so many levels. It's a beautiful project. I think, from what I've heard, I think these guys have done an incredible job on the planning, on the drawings, on looking at the environmental impact. Although I did listen to those people, particularly the women who were talking about they live close by, they're concerned about the well water. I can understand that being a concern. That's something people need to be careful about. So, you know, families, seniors, seniors are the most vulnerable part of our society at this point. And I'm very disturbed, frankly, that I see certain things posted in town about the attitude towards seniors and the funding of seniors, and it should be the complete opposite. We should be endorsing this, we should be supporting this. We should have more families. We should have more families, Mr. Bates, coming into school. Because at the rate we're going, Lebanon's going to lose its school district. We won't be able to.
We're almost at time, and you're supposed to be talking now.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
I am. So anyhow, I'm a big supporter. I think it's a terrific project.
Thank you. I have one person left unless anybody else has signed up in the meantime. Mark Bomley, bring us home.
Hi, I'm Mark Bomley. I have lived in this town my entire life. I did not leave. I've been here my entire life. I've seen New Lebanon go from the Showboat. I didn't get to dance at the Showboat because I was too young and it burnt down. The Ruby that was across the street. The bank that was built where the library is. The building next door, the gentleman didn't know what it was. That used to be the post office. So what we did is we built 2 suburban malls in this strip. Now, there's no country charm to them. Probably the only country charm building added to that strip since I've been alive is probably Blueberry Hill. So now we've got another building that we want to add to it, a 3-story building that I don't think really has any country charm to it. Now we're going to add sidewalks into town. I think, well, in my mind, I envision is 9 and 20 going through East Greenbush out by Route 4. They just built new condos there, businesses on the bottom, sidewalks. We are not Chatham, we are downtown Lenox, so our businesses are right on top of each other where people walk from business to business. They're not going to do that. And also my concern is this lady was speaking over here, where she lives off of Tilden Road. Those wetlands travel over onto Lover's Lane, under the Canyon Road, and join onto the Wyominot Road. So, with all of these things going on in the world, and as we say, who's just went through the PFOAs and all that, who knows what is possibly going to get in that water in another 50 years. So I think we do need a more, and besides just the County Board of Health getting involved, a state of New York and their experts to come in and say, is this really feasible to put this on this property that's already densed with wells and septic systems before you move forward with this project? Thank you.
We have a follow-up. Kristen Lynch.
Sorry to be last minute, I know everybody wants to go. So, a lot of the questions that I have written down have been addressed. A couple of things that I feel didn't really get touched on were I would love more information, data about the actual traffic safety, where will there be crossing for the kids, the school bus question is another whole big thing because sometimes the school buses can't even only be on one side of the road or the other, so are the kids gonna have to cross Route 20 to get on the school bus, things like that. Is there any discussion of adding any traffic light or anything like that in that area? It's difficult enough to get, as you know, if you're trying to turn left from this way onto Route 20, forget about it. You might as well turn right, go somewhere else and turn around. I believe that's an issue. Has anyone addressed the usage and draw on the existing infrastructure such as the electric grid? I would love to see some data on that, as well as, it's not a minor thing, but it's kind of a minor thing, cell service. I can't get a phone call in my house on my cell phone. If we add 86 more people in a grocery store using up signal, am I even going to be able to, can I send a text to my mom? So those are some things that I would love to see some data on.
Thank you. I'm going to say going once, going twice. Mayor Soul. Right. So, having nobody else here tonight, and just for the record, I reserved 4 hours on Zoom for everybody tonight. We have used like 2 of them. So, I mean, we can be here for another couple hours. I am gonna ask, they're in a minor conference. Does the applicant want to address anything tonight or no?
Thank you all for coming.
Microphone.
Okay, so that's for the people at home. My show is not enough. I don't have very much to say at all. Mostly, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I think it might help for context that, so you saw Brendan up here talking about the engineering work that he has done and that other engineers that he subcontractors have done. And there's been an enormous amount of that engineering. In addition, just so you all know, the planning board also has an engineer. Chris, raise your hand. And Fred, we pay for that engineering too. So there's an enormous amount of engineering being done, not just one time, but 2 times. And I think that just sort of should, I offer that to help people have some sense of security, that an enormous amount of scrutiny has already happened and is happening now. We heard all these questions, it's been recorded. We'll come up with some answers so that everybody can read them in a room that's cooler than this one. It won't be long, just a few days. By the way, most of the questions were really good. We really appreciate them. And luckily and thankfully, I think we have really good answers for all of them. So thanks again for everything.
Thanks, Josh. So seeing that there's nobody else to speak, how does the board feel about closing the public hearing tonight?
I motion we close the public hearing tonight.
David will second. All those in favor? Aye. I heard some people from the audience too. That passes 7-0-0. I will state, as everybody's fleeing from the room, that the planning board does have a meeting on June 17th. The applicant has submitted additional information that will be posted on the website next week, probably Thursday. And we will be reconvening for more discussion at that time. Thank you all.